Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our pro tip session on learning experience engineering. We're just going to take a look at some strategies on how to make learning more learner-centric and more engaging and ultimately realize better results. I like this quote, so I thought I'd put it here that education isn't just about throwing things at learners, but it's actually about inspiring engagement and interest and bringing a little excitement to the experience. And that can kind of sum up what experience engineering is. It's the strategic design of learning so that it does pull learners in and gives them some sort of emotional connection or intellectual connection to the content and helps them tie it back to their daily life, to how they're going to apply it, and really encourage them to do things a little bit differently. So I thought the two kind of were good mirrors of each other. Traditionally, the tr training has really been sort of very, very content heavy. It's been about, getting as much material out to people, as many, resources and documents and files and just cramming information down people's throat. It's been a very straight progress, very linear. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, you do this, and that's the same for everybody. Everybody runs through it at the same pace and the same progress in the same order. And the focus often is just getting that completion mark at the end, like, yay, 98% of the people have finished it. We're done. We've accomplished our goal. But there's some real drawbacks to this, and it's really not the big one being that it's really just not having the impact on behavior change that we want. So some of you might know, I was a business consultant in the learning space for about 12 years, and I was really hard to get people to rethink why they were learning. We get so focused on what we're delivering, we forget why we're delivering it. And at the root of it, all learning is going to be driven by behavior change. And that behavior changes that is informed by new information. But the completions sort of tend to dominate, especially in a corporate environment where that's just an easy way to measure our success. But it does distract us a little bit from what we want to be doing. But this has always been important, but I think now there's some factors that really, really make it critical. And I want to go through a few things. Traditional courses that really, time heavy, content heavy courseware is really struggling to compete with just other factors in our learners' lives. Studies have shown the modern worker is interrupted almost every 2 minutes with a message or an email or somebody coming by. They've got a schedule that they don't really have a lot of control over because there's a lot of last minute meetings and get-togethers. There's more and more meetings after hours, and this is just cannibalizing any of the time and attention that learners might need to learn something. And this is really driving a need for shorter and smarter experiences because the amount of time that they have available is down 3.7 hours. So that's quite a bit. That's almost a hit, maybe not quite 20%, but that's quite a bit. And then you factor in that we have most employees are feeling really actively disengaged at work. There's not a whole lot of motivation to take any kind of learning that they don't actually have to take. And that said, I mentioned before, we need to really break that mold of thinking that completions as same as increasing somebody's capability. Only 25% of employees are saying that training has improved their performance at work, in which case, why are you doing it? And only 10% of leaders believe that their workforce is future ready. So there's not really a lot of confidence too in what the learning is happening. So these are all things that have just really telling us that we do need to put a little bit more time and thoughtfulness into the learning that we offer people. There's more trends. We've got the skills-based economy, and that is actually resulting in an increased investment in learning across the board. So that's good. We got a bit more money. There's a bit more recognition that we need to upskill the organization. And for the employees, and maybe something they don't understand is that a huge chunk of their future potential is tied to those skills that they can build on the job. So there is that real potential if we can offer meaningful upskilling education to learners, that we can make it really relevant, not to just their day-to-day right now, but also their future well-being and their future performance in the workplace. So there's a really good sort of marketing opportunity there, if you would. Um, AI is now everywhere, and AI training is getting a ton of traction, to no surprise. Most, more than half of organizations, up to almost two-thirds of organizations, are offering training around AI, and that is getting people interested. One of the major providers has reported that they see 12 enrollments a minute in courses about Gen AI. So what we can see from this is that when there is something that's impacting people at work in a big way, they are motivated to learn about it. So that, does tell us that we can reach people with things that interest them and feel relevant to them. Personalization is another huge shift that is going to shape the trend for learning experience engineering. It's one of the number one trends. People expect things to speak to them. So let's talk just a little bit more deeply about what is experience engineering. It's sort of a move away from just teaching straight content to actually engineering impact, as I've got here. So it's very data and science-driven approach to really, draw on evidence, draw on learning principles to create a learning experience, learning interactions that have meaning. So we're going to look at, like psychology, what really gets people's attention and keeps them motivated. It's also looking at the data of the results. When we see people start to drop off in a course, we're going to tweak the course. So it's never a one and done. We're always going to sort of refine and tweak and apply what we've learned going forward. It's got its roots in that customer experience as well. That's actually where sort of the phrase comes from. So when customer experience sort of hit the scene, it was really about taking a look at a customer's experience with an organization from the very beginning, when they first became aware of an organization, through to when they became a committed customer, and every little touch point along the way, and how to make that more meaningful. So we're applying those same sort of principles here, where we're looking at the learner journey from when they're first, identify a learning need that they have, or when we first reach out to them with a learning requirement, and thinking about how they're going, all the touch points they're going to have with that course and the learning material along the way, and how we can make that better. At what opportunities do we have to make that experience better and more meaningful and more impactful? So the two things combine into this sort of strategic design. So taking all of those elements that we have learned from all the various disciplines and the evidence that we have, and applying it to the journey, to really move people through in a meaningful way. So some of the principles here, it's human-centered. It's very much focused on the learner themselves, their emotional journey, where they are professionally, acknowledging the reality of their day-to-day life, and how hard it is to fit learning in, and how to make it so it matters. So there's a lot of focus on what that learner is feeling and experiencing and needs at any given time. It emphasizes the orchestration of the learning over just a volume of content creation. So it's more, it's a less is more, when the less is meaningful and ranged to really hit the learner when it matters. It's adaptive, it's intelligence, it's going to meet the needs of the individual learner. So back to being sort of human-centric, there's a lot more meeting that need of the individual learner, so that it can hit all the right spots at any given time. Evidence-based, this is where, again, where I say, where you take the data, the results, both going in and coming out. So everything you know about data and what, or learning, and what makes it work, informs your design early on, and then the iterative, watching how it is applied and how it's used, and where learners seem to lose interest, and making those tweaks, which is, that iterative approach. So you're taking the evidence, you're making it iterative, you're continuing to grow and shape, and make it better. And it's focused on the outcomes. And this is actually a big passion area of mine. Again, it's not about the completion, it's about the impact that the learner has. Did the learner take away a new skill, a new insight, a new way of thinking, and actually apply it in a moment that mattered? That's what actually made a difference to their performance. That's always should be the goal of any learning, is to really change behavior in the way that it makes a difference. So let's look at some of the goals. We want to improve student outcomes, as I just described. We want to increase their engagement as well. So recognize that, again, they've got a lot of things pulling at them. We want to really draw them into the learning so they can get the most out of it. We want to support different kinds of learners and what they need with different, content, different interaction points. We want to personalize that experience so it's really targeted to the particular learner and it's not one size fits all. And we want to make it more efficient and more effective. So that means maybe doing smaller courses that hit a little harder. So I'm going to give you 4 examples where applying learning experience engineering. And the baseline example here is a compliance course, but you can think about this as any course. I like to use compliance courses as examples just because I think we can all relate. We all understand what those look like. So we're going to take a compliance course and we're going to give it sort of an immersive narrative. And traditionally, I don't know about you, I used to actually work for a federal contractor, and a lot of our compliance stuff was pretty dry. It was read this, watch this video, now pass this course, watch some more videos, and then, read the policy and pass another quiz. It was dry, it was boring, and you just couldn't wait to get out of it. When you take this same course and you make it sort of learner experience engineers, you can sort of tweak it. So in this example, they're using a cybersecurity one. Take a learner, and now they're a data defender who has to protect their organization. So you're going to prompt them. You're really actually going to take a scenario and encourage them to make decisions in real time. With each decision they make, there's another decision, another event where they have to decide what else to do next. The policy content that you need them to acknowledge, you kind of reveal in bits rather than just a big, massive document. You reveal the critical pieces as they apply, as they're relevant to the scenario. And when you get to the end, it's a reflection of the decisions that they have made along the way. And then you can give some feedback and about where they maybe exposed the company to a risk, where they avoided a risk, what they could have done differently, and the impact that it has. So it's a little bit more like a choose your own adventure story, a little bit more engaging. I don't know about you guys, I used to love those choose your own adventure stories when I was a kid. And it does create a bit more of a stronger emotional connection and about how their actual behavior can have a real everyday impact on the organization. So here we'll talk about using adaptive paths to meet learners where they are. So again, the traditional approach, everybody takes the same course. Doesn't matter what you know, what your role is, everybody takes the same course. In this case, when you learner experience engineer it, you can start up front with just a quick little diagnostic quiz or to see where they're at and what they are, and then adjust the content that you show them so that they'll get something that's a little bit more tailored to them. A high scorer can go to the advanced scenarios. We can get intermediate learners. We can close some of their knowledge gaps before moving them forward. And the newbies just start right at the beginning with a little bit more exposure and explainer videos and so on to really get them oriented and move up. So not everybody's doing the same thing. So that reduces some of the fatigue and some of the more advanced learners, but makes sure that the people who need the information still get it. So you're reducing time. You're showing real respect for the learner's time and their knowledge. And it is giving you a chance to actually really continue to push people through. Let's look at micro moments and feedback and recognition. So traditionally, learners do the whole course and then they get their score at the end, and maybe they'll get a certificate emailed to them. When something is learner experience engineered, you're going to inject little meaningful moments throughout the journey that acknowledge what the learner has done so far. So if they've made a really good decision, you give them a positive feedback on this decision. You can level them up. You can use gamification, which also is a way of offering rewards throughout the course itself rather than waiting until the end. You can insert milestones in the learner journey and acknowledge those. And actually use the gamification to kind of continue to create that story arc. So it really still feels more like an immersive journey. And that, keeps a little bit more emotional investment and reduces drop off. One thing you'll see when you look into learner experience engineering a lot, you'll hear about emotional hooks. And that's really the point where the content really relates to the learner and functions to pull the learner in. Um, so the contrasting this to the traditional approach is long lectures, flat voiceover, and not really any challenge, sort of a very passive approach that kind of can just sort of wash over the learner while they maybe, do something else while they're listening. When you've learned, experienced, engineered it, you are going to really like make a concerted effort to draw them in. So in this scenario, again, with cybersecurity, you are giving them a provocative question or something to really like stop, think, what do you do? This is a real scenario that could happen to you. This is a real example of things that have happened to somebody. You're making it increasingly difficult so that they really feel like there's some momentum here. They're working through it. They're really unraveling this knot. Honestly, you can really think about it as if you were sort of scripting a movie in a way with those a lot of the principles of storytelling, where you're just building the challenge and having the conflicts. But keep them engaged, make sure they get those cues and feedback so they don't feel too lost at any point or like it's too hard. You're going to keep them pulled in. And then, get them to that point of tension and then the resolution and then that ability to reflect on everything that they've learned. So that's sort of a real flow where they're absorbed and they're motivated, and then they're a little less aware of time passing or feeling bored. So how can you make the shift with some of your existing courses? Obviously, this is not something you do overnight. This is not something you do with every single course you have. So you're first going to want to maybe think about some of the big courses you have in your organization, that are really, really critical that you want to experiment with and start there. And with that, you're first going to map the journey. Whether it's a journey is from that moment the learner first becomes aware of the course to when they actually, finish it and start applying the knowledge to work. That's the entirety of the journey. So they become aware of the course. They have to sit down and take the course. What are they learning throughout the course? And what do we hope that they take away? Then design the experience, add the orchestration elements. So all those elements like the gamification and the kudos and the nudges and all of those things, and then the measuring impact. So let's look at this a little bit more about how to map the learner's journey. So you want to understand the current state. So what's happening today with this particular course? How do people become aware of it? Do they take it? What do they do with it? What do they feel about it? I mean, with something like compliance course, I think quite often the resounding feeling is to like, ugh, again, I guess, fine, whatever. Um, so you do want to kind of get a pulse of that and an understanding of that. And then you think about how you want to change that, what you want it to look like. And then the last one, the key action, what business or performance problem is this course designed to solve? What do we hope that the learner is going to apply at the end of all this? What do we want to be different? We don't just want there to be a check next to it. We want there to actually be learners who do not fall for phishing scams, or learners who, know what to do when their laptop gets stolen, things like that. So you really want to map those out. Those are the key things that are really important. So you want to like, shift how you're thinking from just like getting it out there to actually making some change. Really focus again on what the learner is thinking and the context that they're coming into. So again, maybe with a required course around security, they're coming to it with a sort of sense of obligation, annoyance, and they're busy and they don't want to do this. You want to focus on understanding that this is taking some time out of their day, but that it is really important, not just the organization, but to them as well. And as they've got responsibility to the organization to keep things safe, and that they're part of this sort of defense mechanism, this first line of defense. So really sort of focus on thinking what they might be feeling and how you can kind of, shape that. So some questions to ask yourself: what's the desired behavior? What is preventing your training from being successful today? And which moments throughout the course could you leverage to spark some change? So the next one is designing and orchestrating the experience here. So you want to think of your learning in terms of a sequence of moments, of things that really like those sparks that are going to build and capture some knowledge, capture some things that inspire change and really start to drive some of those behavior changes that you want. Some of the moments too are going to be like decision points. So as we talked about with that example, they make the the laptop is stolen, what do you do? And the option maybe is, you call your boss, you let IT know, which one do you do? And then you can branch off from there in different adaptive paths. So those are the actual points where you have to do something, and branch off from there. What are the emotional hooks? Where are places that we can draw people in, where we can reward them as well for the decisions that they've made and pose maybe a new challenge? And then think about just how you're going to deliver this learning. What's the best way to get that message across? When you're using the principles of learning experience design, again, you're going to think about it, make it human-centric. You're going to emphasize the orchestration of our content. You're going to make it adaptive, evidence-based, iterative, and outcome-focused. So all those elements we talked about before. So when you're looking to design it, you're thinking about where the learner is in their day, in their journey, and all of that, and really meeting them where they are, making sure that it feels relevant to them and valuable to them, and they're taking something away. You're going to focus again on designing the experience rather than just delivering walls of content. You're going to adapt to where they are. That's sort of, not putting everybody through the same stream, and make sure it's evidence-based, and you can polish it and iterate. So if it is something like compliance, if you can do it in batches, that can give you some really good opportunities to see what worked in the first iteration and polish and refine it for the next one. So questions you might want to ask yourself: where are learners dropping off? Where might they drop off? Is it possible that they could kind of check out and not do it? Now, in a case, of course, with the compliance course, they might not have the option to just not take the training, but you can see a point maybe where people maybe stop and you have to start bugging them to come back and finish it. That's a place where you might want to look for, or places where you just kind of see that people kind of sort of start tuning it out. If that's something you can acknowledge as well. In the CYPHER platform, we have something called a learning meter, which does allow you to measure people's interaction with the screen. And so that is one way kind of seeing where people maybe aren't super engaged and they're kind of letting it sit. And then also think about like what's emotional arc can you build to go with this course that does draw people in and make them feel engaged and excited about it. So we saw an example of an emotional arc with the cybersecurity, but it'll be different for different kinds of courses. But the goal again is to make people feel like they've got stakes in it, like this is important learning that they're doing, and it's again relevant to them and it matters to them, and it's going to make them better at their job, or their day-to-day, or whatever kind of learning you're offering. We want to enable and engage with real context. So we're going to give them job aids, nudges, automations in their real day-to-day. We're going to include micro feedback and recognition. We're going to embed learning into the flow of work. So, that can be giving them little pieces when they need it, if that's relevant. So if you're rolling out a new system, for example, and you have a ton of training, rather than make people sit down for 4 days and do 4 days worth of training, you can say, week one of the new solution, we're going to do some training about how to set up your profile, for example, and look for elements that you can add, the sort of social and collaborative elements. Those are really, really nice. Like, talk to people like, hey, what does everybody think of the new solution? Here's a group. What did you put on your profile? What did you put on your profile? Like, what have you learned so far? Those are really nice ways to bring people in and, again, make it more relevant to them, and by sharing things with each other. So design not just for design for skills transfers, not for retention. That skills transfer. That means we're teaching them something they're going to apply to their everyday. And you do want to make sure that this experience that you're giving them is going to apply to their job. So our goal is to make them better at something that they can do and apply every day. So things to ask yourself: what is going to happen after they finish training? So with cybersecurity, actually, the real challenge sometimes with cybersecurity is that you leave training and sometimes nothing happens for days, weeks, months, whatever. So that's one of the reasons that's so important to make that a really meaningful experience, because they might not draw on it for a while. But in an example of training them on a new system, they're going to go away and they're going to try this new system. They're going to log in for the first time. So you want to think about that and think about what they're going to do right away and what you want them to be able to do better and how you can support that. And think about little ways that you can interact with them to really spark retention. So maybe push a really small micro course a couple of days after that first overview of the new solution, just as with some quick hits that remind people of everything that they learned and how they might need to apply it. I do see some questions coming in. I will get to them, I promise. We do also have Mark Schuster on the line for a little bit longer, so he might be able to answer it as well. Um, Okay, and then finally, measure the impact and iterate. As I mentioned, this is a huge, huge passion area of mine. I think it's so important to tie behavior change back to learning rather than just course completions. So when you're designing a course and you're setting out your blueprint, really think about what you want to see. What do you want to have happen? In a cybersecurity case, we want to reduce our vulnerability to phishing attempts or any disaster if somebody's laptop gets stolen. With a new system, we want to make sure people are able to use it effectively so we don't lose a lot of productivity. We want people to so we want to reduce that time to productivity with a new system. If it's manager training, we want to create better managers. We want managers whose employees say, yeah, this guy has really improved how they do our performance reviews. So really think about those key performance metrics. The big one from a business perspective, usually it's increasing productivity, it's reducing downtime, it's maybe increasing employee engagement. There's a number of them. We did do a webinar a couple of months ago, maybe back in the spring, about measuring business impact. I do have a link to that in this presentation. I encourage you to check that out. It can really maybe give you some motivation to really think about how you're going to measure learning impact. And then make sure you collect that data. So a lot of that data is not going to live in your learning management system. A lot of that data is going to live in some business systems. So it's, think about where that is and how you're going to measure that and coordinate with the person or people who can get you that. Iterating, that means like short cycles of improvement. So make little changes at a time. Don't feel like you have to boil the ocean or do everything all at once. Try a few things, see how they work, and keep building on that. And if it works really well, do more of it. If it doesn't work, then don't. If it doesn't hurt, leave it. Just don't do it again. If it isn't working at all, take it out and try something different. So think about continuous improvement learning systems rather than a one-off course. Don't try to like shove everything at a person in a massive course. Try to think about small courses that people can move through in a way that's a little bit more accessible and more meaningful. It also improves retention when people aren't trying to learn everything all at once. Get feedback from people. Make sure you're always closing the loop on that from your learners as well. You can look sort of at those unspoken things like the where they drop off, for example, and their actual engagement on the screen and so on, and their scores and how they interact with the system. But you can also just straight up ask, what did you think of that? How engaged were you? So you're going to need things like dashboards for measuring things. So you do want to measure enrollment, assuming it's an optional course. If it's a required course, enrollment is not very helpful. But you also want to measure engagement in the content and those business KPIs. You are going to want to look at what data is telling us, what is the data? Is it telling us people are stuck on a certain topic? What data is leading us to that conclusion? And what can we do about it? And maybe think about what will raise the impact. And think, don't think massive, think small. 10% upon 10% upon 10% ultimately has a massive impact. But if you're trying to change everything all at once, it's a bit overwhelming. All right, so let's look some really, really practical ways. So that was kind of a high level step back, assess. Now let's look at some ways you can really leverage your LMS to engineer the experience. So adaptive learning paths are such a big one, so helpful. And that is creating different pathways or different ways to interact with the pathways based on the learner. So you're not forcing everybody through the same experience. You're actually dynamically adapting to them, to either what they know, the results they've got, or their role. So a new employee is oftentimes they're put through the same, a full course. But if you've hired somebody with a ton of experience, that might not be appropriate, and that's actually just keeping them from ramping up. So if you can offer sort of an assessment quiz up front to gauge their knowledge, and then plop them in the right place to continue, so that you're making the most of their time, and making it feel relevant. So the next one is scenario-based course design with branching logic. So it's that choose your own adventure idea. So it's building a story, building a narrative that allows the learners to make decisions and learn from those decisions. And you can make this possible also using the adaptive course. You can essentially just sort of set up a quiz, and the answer, depending on what answer they make, they get put into a different branch. So it's not a separate functionality. It's how you're using a functionality. Um, and so you're just pushing people through, giving them choices, giving them different outcomes, and then helping them learn from that outcome. So rather than just being passive, they're actually participating in the story. Micro moments and nudges. This is where automation becomes your best friend, and really, it'll take some thought to get it set up, but once you have it going, it's just going to run. So you're going to give them contextual nudges that keep them connected. So things like badges or just kudos, little things like that just really acknowledge where they are in the process, and how well they're doing. Going to create more emotional hooks with gamification. Competition is a great emotional hook, but so is just that feeling of accomplishment of, yeah, I'm a top tier data defender. The company can count on me. It sounds corny, but it's still kind of fun. And again, really easy. And they're really the effective, easy ways to get people pulled in, and also maybe, get them thinking about where they can go next, what they can work for next. So for example, a sales onboarding program that has levels and badges tied to the system. It's actually excellent for sales. Salespeople are very competitive. It's a really great way to get them to participate. But it helps people feel like they're really progressing and moving forward. AI can be your friend and help cut out some of that busy work, helping you create some of this content as you move through, even just helping you create a course outline. Or conversely, if you, with CYPHER Agent, if you have your content, you've thought it out, you've written it out, you can put it in and create the course, and then you can leverage AI to then build some of the quizzes for you or add some of the gamification. You don't have to do everything all at once with CYPHER Agent. You can selectively choose some elements. So that's really going to help you get some of this stuff done. The multimodal learning journey. So this is using a combination of videos or readings, leveraging some of the social components with discussions, live sessions, or quizzes. So you can add a few things into a particular module to make it more than just one element, get a little bit of rhythm going, and inject some variety so people don't just feel like they're doing the same thing all the time. So reflection prompts are a great example. Like, why might somebody, for example, do a phishing scam with your organization? Because sometimes people make mistakes on this stuff simply because they don't actually appreciate the consequence. They can't think about why somebody else might want to do that. So getting them to think about where they might be vulnerable as an organization, for example, is just a good way to move them through. And collaborative tools are a good way to enable that kind of reflection. It's they can share their thoughts with other people. They can do it asynchronously, so you don't have to get everybody together all at the same time. And actually, one of the things I really actually like about collaboration tools too is they're a way of allowing some people who might not participate in a live classroom session to participate, because it gives them a bit of time to reflect on what they want to say and how they want to say it. So it's excellent for people who are working in a language that's not their first language, for example, or who just shy or whatever other reasons. So take advantage of all these different ways of orchestrating learning. Inject that real-time feedback loop. Again, this is a great way, the instructor feedback, obviously, excellent. Peer interactions, we do have that opportunity to do peer interactions in CYPHER, and then the kudos and the nudges and the badges are also those feedback loops. Forums and chats. So these are the first one was sort of multimodal, like videos and guides and stuff, as well as the social, but really do leverage the collaboration piece. You can put everybody in a course all together. You can break it out to like different kinds of people. You can take that first score that people might take in the first element. So you can have the advanced, intermediate, and beginners in different groups. So you can get people who are kind of in similar places interacting, or you can put them all together and maybe encourage people to learn from people who are a bit more advanced. But do really take advantage of that to create more engaging experiences. And these don't have to be course based as well. So, you might not want it might be too much to maintain for a single course, but as a whole, you could offer a collaborative experience that, all things corporate security, for example, that is related both to the course as well as other courses you might have, or just other elements in general. Really automate those milestones, acknowledge when people are going to, reach a point, drip the content. Mark Schuster did an excellent session on how to use content dripping a little while back. You can find that on our CYPHER Live page, where we have all of our former recordings. It's kind of a challenge too, saying like, we got more for you, but you've got to be ready. Like, you didn't really challenge people to move forward and advance. It's also a good way of making something feel not quite so overwhelming by only showing them what they need in the moment, and building out that story, teasing it out. And then for you as the designers, you're going to leverage the analytics and the reporting capabilities to really get deep insight. So you want to find where learners are engaged or disengaged. You can use the learning meter to help you do that, or simply their completion of the modules. See how long it takes a learner to get through an experience. And then also doing the reporting on are people actually, is it making a difference? Are we seeing improved rates when we do our, when IT always does those phishing experiments, like what are people's rates? Have they improved after they moved through training or not? But if you do see a lot of engagement rate after certain points, then that tells you that that's the area where you do need to buff it up, make it a little bit more interactive, a bit more engaging, try something different to really pull people back in. So all of these little pieces are going to just take your LMS just from a delivery platform into something that's more of an orchestration and experience platform. You're going to be able to craft emotional journeys, really personalize at scale without overwhelming your own team, your administrative team. I do recognize this is still a little bit more work than just doing a big old brain dump on a topic and throwing it out there. But if the goal is change, then this is the work that's really necessary to get the change that you want. It's far more effective, and effective matters more than anything at the end of the day. Results matter more than completions. Results matter more than content time or learning time. Because you really want to create that learning that sticks and drives change, because and you're doing it because you're making it matter to the learner. So by making it matter to the learner, it's going to have that bigger impact on both the learner and the organization and the outcomes that you want to change. All right, so we do have a couple of resources. I am going to offer a blueprint that just has some tips beyond what I showed you on the slide on how to start to transform your learning with engineering. You'll be able to link to it from this presentation file. We'll also send it out in our follow-up email. I mentioned that Mark Schuster did a content dripping webinar, but we also did one on gamification and automation. So if you want to look at how you can optimize those features in CYPHER, we can take a look at the CYPHER Live demos. For reference, all of our CYPHER Lives and all of our Pro Tips webinars are available to you on our website. If you look under resources, you'll see a page for CYPHER Live and for CYPHER Pro Tips. You can also go to our YouTube channel and find them there. And I also mentioned previous pro tips that we did on measuring learning success. So that's sort of the conceptually how to think about measuring learning success. We also did a follow-up CYPHER Live on specifically how to use the reporting functionality in CYPHER to get some of that insight. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope you found this interesting, valuable. Love your feedback. If you do have any thoughts on topics you'd like to see us cover in future sessions, either a Pro Tips or a CYPHER Live, please do let me know. I'll be happy to follow up on that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.